never came back after the first mowing. It's really bad.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get some nice moisture. It's coming. I know that the mountains in the southwest are actually getting pretty good moisture right now, but we're down. And so anyway, Wendy, good to see you as well.
You.
Evelinda, we're going to get to see you. We're just going to hear you.
Diane?
Yes.
What part of town do you live? The foothills?
We live in Evergreen.
Evergreen.
So we're 5 miles from Bergen Parkway, but the
Right.
5 miles is so windy, it takes a while. And we're on top of a hill, so we look out at all of Mount Evans.
Wow, I hope you get some snow.
We're hoping. It's not enough yet, but fingers
There's
crossed. And I
Michael.
apologize. For some reason, I'm on here twice. I don't know why. I'm not computer savvy. The gray is showing.
It's all right. It's all right. Hey guys, got a lot of stuff I want to cover today. So again, I always talk, Susan and I, about the coming Torah portions. Again, this is a Torah portion that has so much in it that you could have an entire year just parsing what's going on. And there's so much that I thought, well, I could focus on the Shirat HaYam because that's chapter 15, and that's where we have the Michamocha and the text that's written in a very unique way. And there's the first experiences right after the crossing of the Sea of Reeds, in which the children of Israel are complaining about the water's too bitter. And then once they get the bitter waters fixed, then they don't have enough to eat, and they get manna. And then there's more drought, and they're complaining about water again. So 3 times, and then there's Amalek comes in. So it's like a synopsis of the entire 40-year journey within just the first 3 days of them crossing the Sea of Reeds. So I'm going to focus instead on the very, very beginning because it's a terrific passage. And in the past couple of weeks, we've been looking what Rashi has to say and what Nachmanides and Sforno, etc. Today, I have 2 of the major comments. One is from Mechilta Rabbi Ishmael, which comes from the 2nd to 3rd century. It's a midrash that is one of our oldest. And then there's a passage from the Talmud. Those are the 2 major pieces that I want to focus on. So I hope you'll like it. And since I've got like 14 pages of text, I think we'll have plenty for 1 hour. So with that, let us recite a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam,
asher
kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah.
Praised are you, Adonai, our God, creator of the universe, who sanctified us with mitzvot, and you commanded us to engage with words of Torah. So with that, I'm going to bring the text up in just a second. Anybody have any questions or thoughts? You know the significance of Shabbat Shirah? This is, the people say Shabbat Shirah, Shabbat Shirah. Why? Because this is the Torah portion, chapter 15, in which we have the Shirat HaYam. And that includes Michamocha, that prayer which we recite both every morning and evening. And so the tradition is to have some kind of major musical experience in the synagogue during this week. In the past, Temple Sinai members, we have had spectacular concerts, some of them involving adult and youth choirs. Sometimes we've had a special artist who's come in, wonderful productions. But this year we're on the screen, right? And yet, on Friday night, Rabbi Jordy and Dan Yolis will have something. Susan and I will lead the Shabbat morning service in which she will chant Shabbat Shirah and with that text, and she and I will come up with a medley of something funky. And that night, Saturday night, we'll have Sheldon Lowe for a free concert. Did I say free? Yes. So that means you don't have to pay anything, and you can watch it twice then. No, this is going to be a lot of fun. And so we'll do our very best to have music and jam and celebrate. So with that build up, we're not going to look at chapter 15 because we're going to do a lot of that later on in the week. Let's look at chapter 14, the end of 13 and beginning of 14. So that's what we got. Okay, I'm going to make it nice and large for everybody. How's that?
Little bigger.
Is that all right now?
Yep.
There we go. Good. So this, the very end of chapter 13, this is how the Torah portion begins. Vayihi b'shalach paro, and when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, though it was near. Now, what does that mean, not by the way of the Philistines? Anybody have an idea? So here's, I wish I had a map I could show you, but Egypt's right here, Israel's up here. That connecting land bridge is the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula, and here's the Mediterranean. So in some ways, it would be a lot easier. Now, if you took a bus, as when I went to Egypt, we went from Ashkelon, actually Tel Aviv, Ashkelon, and then Ashdod, and then taking a bus all the way through the top of the Mediterranean, at the top of the Sinai Peninsula, to Cairo. And that seems, it's shorter, it's right there, that bridge along the sea, but also by going along the sea, you have some resources. You can fish, you can get some ability to nurture yourself. But instead, God said, we're not going to go that shorter way along the land where the Philistines were. Now, the Philistines were considered probably they call them sometimes the sea peoples. They were either refugees or marauders or adventurers from the Greek islands, specifically from Crete. And so they came with actually some, you think, well, refugees, they weren't poor and bedraggled. They had some sophisticated weaponry and were then a significant force that had to be dealt with. So God said, we're not going to take you along the land by the way of the sea, along the place where the Philistines are, the sea people, lest the people have a change of heart when they see war and return to Egypt. So God led the people round about by way of the wilderness at the Sea of Reeds. And now the Israelites went up armed out of Egypt. So I want to bring this text from Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael. And so who would like to read a little bit of this midrash for us? It's a two-parter. No pressure.
I'll read.
Thank you, Natalie.
Okay. By way of the land of the Philistines, for it was near. The first war, that with Egypt, was too close to the second, that with Canaan. Alternatively, for it was near, the Canaanites had only recently acquired the land, and they, the Israelites, shall return here in the fourth generation, for the sin of the Amorites is not yet complete. Alternatively, for it was near, the Holy One, blessed be he, did not bring them directly to Eretz Israel, but by way of the desert, saying, if I bring them there now, immediately each man will seize his field, and each man his vineyard, and they will neglect Torah study. Rather, I will keep them in the desert 40 years, eating manna and drinking from the well, and the Torah will be absorbed in their bodies. From here, Rabbi Shimon would say, the Torah was given to be expounded only by the eaters of manna, and like them, the eaters of teruma.
So these are, if you look at the whole text of this Mechilta passage, they keep saying Devar Acher, here's another way of interpreting it. And so it's not as if they just collected willy-nilly different kinds of interpretations and just sort of stuck them together. There is some editorial thought process behind here. So let's think of that in a second. The first is they just had a war with Egypt, and they're not yet ready to war with Canaan. Now, Canaan, of course, is the tribes that they will see in the land of Israel, and eventually, when they get to that land and they sent the spies to check it out, they saw, oh my gosh, these are fortified cities, and the people are well armed, and they even exaggerated and said they're like giants. And so the Torah said, you know what, having one war right next to the last war is a little bit too much, and so we're gonna not do that. What was the second debar here? Anybody remember the second interpretation as to why God would send us on the roundabout? Now, again, it was not God's intention that would take a full 40 years, for goodness sakes, right? But that we should be at least in the land of Israel well within a year. One of the commentaries said that normally a caravan would be able to cross that Sinai Peninsula within a couple of weeks, right? Maybe one of them actually said 10 days. But okay, if you're schlepping 600,000, maybe it's a little bit longer. But not 40 years, for goodness sakes. So, but God wanted us to go the long way around, deep into the Sinai Peninsula, and then back up. So, what was the second reason? Should we go ahead, Margie?
So the second reason was that he was afraid that the people would grab some land and start making, their comfortable life, forget about Torah and the experience and what it meant.
Well, that was the third one. Let me go back to let's show the second again. So you're right. I'm going to hold you off with that. So see what it says. The Canaanites had only recently acquired the land, and the Israelites shall return here in the fourth. For the sin of the Amorites is not yet complete. Can you see where we are?
Mm-hmm.
So the Torah, or at least the editor, said, well, one is that the people are a little bit shell-shocked from all of the fighting. They're not ready to take on the Canaanites. But also the Canaanites are too strong. Why are the Canaanites too strong?
Ammonites.
Because the sin of the Ammonites, the Amorites, they're not worthy of. They have not proven themselves unworthy. They are not corrupt enough yet to be vulnerable to these refugees. They're too strong and they're too good. God says, give them some time. They will destroy themselves, or at least they'll become easier for you refugees to come back into your homeland. So one of them was that you have to wait for your enemy to be corrupt. And so now, Margie, the third one.
That they would find the land very seductive to go ahead and just stop and start their lives there. And then they wouldn't have the Torah they needed, and maybe the whole story of the Exodus to embedded in their bones. I love that part. Yeah, I think
right.
That's it.
They needed time to mature, to develop their own sense of who they are.
Right.
And the fact did they ever?
That's a good question.
They went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah, but eventually God said, you know what, that whole generation, we're gonna shelf them, right? Yes. So go ahead, Alan.
Excuse me. I was going to say that journey was the original caravan. And where they're going, there's no gates to get in there. No walls to get in. Yeah. They could just go right in.
Well, but it wasn't just go right in. They also had the battle.
Well, it wasn't.
There was the opposition.
Right, it wasn't.
That was right. The second one, that, you know what, your opposition is strong and they've got their act together. So The Mechilta is wondering why God would make us go the long way around, and each one of them sort of added a different perspective.
Rabbi, something
Yes.
that's always confused me about this whole thing, nobody's discussing all the children. I mean, they have 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds and all these kids, and nobody's discussing the animals. I mean, you can't make an oxen walk 20 miles, or they were walking day and night. It, where is the reality in relationship to the animals and the children?
Well, that's very good. So, Amy, why don't you fill in the blank? I mean, that's what Midrash is all about. We have in this second and third century of the Common Era talking about this Exodus that happened at that point about 1600 years earlier. And they're filling in the blanks, asking the questions. So why don't you? That's what we're doing with Midrash. So you can write an entire new Midrash about the kids and the animals.
They have to walk slowly.
Okay, but not 40 years slowly, right?
Well,
Yeah,
they grow up and there's more children.
Yeah, Amy, I wonder if they all walked together. I mean, the old cattle drives in the morning, the chuck wagon would head out with the scout, and because they had to get ahead of everybody and start cooking dinner. And I'm wondering if the animals, who's going to walk with a bunch of animals in the desert, in the era before masks? The children probably need to be on carts, shaded. Their moms need to be nearby. Maybe they didn't all walk in one big mass. They had the kids section here and the elders over here, and the animals probably way in the back, because of the dust. That's, I'm just, I wasn't there, so I don't know. But
No, but see, you're putting together a midrash, which is wonderful. And again, that may be a part of what what Margie mentioned, is that during that journey, and again, it was not intended to be 40 years, but still a full year to absorb all of the lessons and the concerns. Laura, you raised your hand.
That may be an oxymoron.
Was that the dumb
Oxymoron.
ox? Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's just,
Okay, Margie, please.
Is there any archaeologically proof that it was 600,000 individuals, animals going?
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal. First of all, the text says 600,000 men of fighting age. So if you extrapolate from that, it's several million of people. Now, commentators for a long time have wondered, really, because the desert's not going to maintain that size. Now, if you're a fundamentalist, you have a hard time with that. I'm not a fundamentalist, and so I don't look at the text as Maimonides said, don't read the text as if it's a cheap novel. It's filled with metaphor, and we're to glean from the language lessons that go beyond the literal. So there are those in the among those who look at that and try to find a reason for the number, saying, well, maybe 600 aleph or 600,000 wasn't aleph wasn't necessarily 1,000, but maybe it was a brigade, or maybe it was a group or a troop. Maybe it was like a 10. So people can spend time dealing with the numbers. All we know is that when you are a caravan, like you mentioned, Alan, of refugees who are coming through an area, it's fraught with danger. And Amy brought along the idea, and I think it's well taken, that it's not just the healthy adults. We're talking about people of the very youngest, the very oldest, and the animals, and everyone in between who going to be straggling. And so, Kathy, one of the things that we'll have at the very end of this Torah portion is the introduction of Amalek, and that's how this Torah portion actually concludes. And the sin that the Amalekites did was that they attacked, exactly as you mentioned, the stragglers. And who are the stragglers? Those who have the hardest time keeping up. And so we'll get to that at the very, very, very end. So let's look at, again, we're going back to the...
I was going to say that I'm a retired auditor and I dream of numbers. So
Good. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to this next part of that passage from Mechelta. This is Marja said I picked on you for the third alternative. We've got one more.
Okay. Alternatively, for it was near, Adonai did not bring them indirectly. For when the Canaanites heard that the Israelites were coming, they arose and burned all the vegetation and cut down all the trees and razed the buildings and stopped up the springs. Whereas the Holy One, blessed be he, said, I did not promise their fathers to bring them to a ruined land, but one full of all good things and houses full of all good. Rather, I will keep them in the desert until the Canaanites arise and restore what they have destroyed.
Right. So they're trying to piece together, and it's, again, they're not necessarily contradictory, but we're trying to get into our mind the leading. The one would be the fear that the children of Israel would not be prepared for these multiple confrontations. The other is that the Canaanites themselves were not yet corrupt. They did not deserve to have their land taken from them. The third being that the children of Israel were not prepared spiritually, that they were still looking for, as you know, if you are hungry and you're denied things, the first thing you want to do is eat and take care of your own needs. But rather they needed that time in the desert to absorb Torah, to absorb the lessons. So think not just of the individual or of your family, but to think of a nation. And it was as a nation, as a people, that we were created in the wilderness. And finally, that the land itself needed to be developed. So each one of these sort of adds on to the next for a deeper understanding. And of course, the invitation is darsheni. Each of you can add to that thought. And the analogous situations that we have of what is it for a refugee to come in to a new land. And then finally, I added one of the references here, lest the people have a change of heart when they see war. And this is the war of Amalek. And again, as I mentioned, the major reference to Amalek is here in Numbers, and then again in Deuteronomy, Zachor v'lo tishchach. But the first one mentioned about Amalek is at the end of this week's Torah portion. So now a little bit further on in this Midrash, Mechelta, they're going to focus on another passage, another line in this an opening of the Torah portion. So who would like to read this from the later on in Mechelta?
I can.
Thank you.
So God led the people around about by the way of the wilderness at the Sea of Reeds, in order to perform miracles and mighty acts with the manna and the quail and the well. Rabbi Eliezer says, in order to weary them, Psalms 102:24, he drained my strength on the way. He shortened my days in the wilderness. In order to purify them, Deuteronomy 8:15, who led you through the greatest and awesome desert, the Sea of the Reeds, in order to try them. Psalm 106:7, our fathers in Egypt did not absorb your wonders. They did not remember the abundance of your loving kindness, and they rebelled at the Sea of the Reeds. Rabbi Yehoshua says, in order to give them the Torah, of which it is written, Deuteronomy 5:30, in all the way that the Lord your God has commanded you, you shall go. And Mishliah
That's actually, it's
6:23.
Proverbs. That's the book of Proverbs.
For a mitzvah is a lamp, and Torah is light, and the way of life.
Okay, so let's look at these real quick. So this is a different take. Again, previously we had a number of different reasons, and this one, it was, again, the spiritual development, but it also makes mention of the rebellion at the Sea of Reeds. Now, we're going to get to that in just a second, because they're just leaving Egypt. They've got their dough on their shoulder that's not yet risen. They get all the family marching out on that incredible journey, and all of a sudden they see Pharaoh and his troops marching after them, charging after them. So this one has that. Well, we wanted to take time again in order that we would have time to reflect on all the miracles. Yehoshua or Joshua said that, you know what, a roundabout, because you have to prepare to have a Torah. Now, what does it mean that in all the ways of the Lord God has commanded you to go? For the mitzvah is a lamp. So why would I need to have a longer period of time, a roundabout way, in order to see that in all the ways, darchei noam, all the ways of God are pleasant? Why would I need that?
So I think you need time to experience it and sort of do some reality testing, because it is abstract, and you can see where they would. The other thing we didn't talk about besides kids and animals is illness, and anything else that would befall them would make them, I think, question the whole story and faith.
Right. I love that. That's very, very good. Anyone else has something to add to that? I'm thinking of the wisdom of experience too, because there's book learning, right? And you can get your degree and you can say, yes, I am now a degreed person and I've got my wisdom, and yet street smarts and life experiences, that adds a whole new dimension. So I get that, when you have young people, sometimes you try to share some perspectives, and you'll get, oh, I know, which is always in the triplicate, right? It's not I know, or I know, but it's I know, which emphasizes that they know everything, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And so really, that's marvelous, good. And I suppose the Mechilta was saying, no, you know what? You need some time. You need time to apply those lessons that are the abstract, the theoretical, and put them to life experiences. And all of a sudden they realize a little bit deeper experience. Anybody?
I think also, as you go through life, I think you gain empathy. And I think empathy helps with education. And, as you're traveling along there and experiencing all this, and you're living in these tents all over the place, that I think that just helps mature the people.
Yeah, I love that. That's very, very good. Because not just that I've learned all these life lessons, I've learned to be empathetic. That's beautiful. Thank you, Amy. Let's get to the second part of this. Again, this is continuing Rabbi Yehoshua's piece. He's now riffing on the wilderness. Why am I going to send him not by way of the Mediterranean, where there's water and there's fish? I'm going to put them in the middle of the desert. Why?
In order to feed them manna. Who fed you manna in the desert? The Red Sea, in order to perform for miracles and
right.
wonders.
So, Sherry, I'm sorry, Liz. So they're riffing on various lines. So one is on the why the wilderness, in order to feed them with manna. And how do we know that? Then it says, well, in Devarim, or in Deuteronomy, who fed you in the manna in the desert. Now it's going to look at the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, which is probably what I should do to be more consistent. Because Yam Suf is Sea of Reeds. It's not necessarily the Red Sea. So now Mechator Rabbi Yehoshua is looking at that line, why Yam Suf? Go ahead, Amy.
In order to perform for them miracles and wonders, as it is written in Psalm 106, 21 through 22, they forgot the God who saved them, who brought great deeds in Egypt, wonders in the land of Sham, awesome acts at the Red Sea, and he rebuked the sea of reeds, and it dried up, and he led them through the depths as though through a desert.
As through a desert. Very, very good. So now, the first part was just why did he schlep them all the way in the middle of the desert as opposed to going along the sea? And it's still, if you look at a map, you wonder, wow, it's not that even that far. Why they do this? Now, one of the things that, and I'm not going to go into great detail with it, but some of you have studied with Susan, and she has this wonderful lesson on the finding of the bones of Joseph and bringing them out with her. And then, of course, we'll continue on. So let's who's going to read this very next piece, the conclusion of chapter 13 here? Anybody? Go ahead.
And Moses took with him the bones of Joseph, who had exacted an oath from the children of Israel, saying, God will be sure to take notice of you. Then you shall carry up my bones from here with you. They set out from Sukkot and encamped at Etam at the edge of the wilderness. Adonai went before them in a pillar of cloud by day to guide them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, that they might travel day and night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people.
Excellent. Okay, so this is Orach Chaim is going to talk. It's really wonderful. Kathy, if you continue, it's again Joseph's bones they were either buried, they were interred. One of the midrash says that was actually buried in the middle of the Nile because one of the pharaohs wanted to got an oracle that the children of Israel will leave once they find the bones, and if they don't find the bones, they won't be able to leave. So he put them in the middle of the Nile. So wonderful midrashim as to how they found the bones, where they found the bones, but they had to bring it mizeh etchem because the oath that Joseph made to his brothers is that the brothers will swear that one day when they go back to the land of Israel, to the promised land, that you will bring my bones mizeh from there etchem with you. So Kathy, go ahead and read this from Orach Chaim in the 18th century.
Okay, mizeh etchem, with you from this place. The word mizeh does not mean from here. Example, that Joseph thought the brothers would have to locate his remains exactly in the place where he made them swear this oath. Joseph used the expression as the reason he asked the brothers to swear such an oath. He considered it as a small repayment of all the favors he had done for the brothers during their stay in Egypt. He went so far as to hint that taking his bones out of Egypt for burial in the Holy Land would compensate for the time when they had separated themselves from their brotherhood with him. The angel had told Joseph in Genesis that the brothers had departed from. Joseph used the words echem or mazet.
Nasu, that we will travel forth from here.
Nasu mizeh, yeah. Mizeh etchem, to indicate that if the brothers would fulfill their oath, he would consider them as having reinstated him in their midst.
Okay, pause it just a second. I don't know if this source says Zeh equals 12. The Zayin is the fifth letter. The Hey is the Zayin is the seventh letter. The Hey is the fifth letter. 7 plus 5 is 12. So even saying Mizeh, why from Mizeh? Or he could have said Mipo or Misham, right? From here or from there. Instead it's mizeh, from this. Well, because he used that term as a reference to the 12, i.e. the 12 brothers. And so, I'm sorry, then Joseph used the word mizeh etchem. Kathy, continue, please.
Yeah, to indicate that if the brothers would fulfill their oath, he would consider them as having reinstated him in their midst. The sin they had committed against him at that time would then have been wiped out. In other words, Joseph would forgive the brothers posthumously for simply swearing the oath.
Wonderful. Now, note the act. What was the sin that the brothers did to Joseph? What'd they do?
They sold him into slavery.
Yes, but what was the first thing that they did?
They dropped him in a pit.
Right. They put him into this well, in this pit. And that may have been done. Diane, we'll see you. I know you have to leave, but so I hope they'll see you soon. And so their sin started with dropping his bones and flesh down into this pit, and it would only be then forgiven when they brought his bones back up from Egypt. So a nice little midrash there, so that we can have forgiveness from those who hurt us, even if not in our own time, in our own lifetime, but just a promise that it will be made well in the generations to come. Anyone else has a thought on this? Not a one, not a thing. Okay. So we're going to continue on. Now we're starting chapter 14. So I need a good reader. Who would like to share?
I'll share. I'm not a good reader, but
Yes, you are, Jerry. Thank you.
Adonai said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp before Pi Hahiroth, between Migdal and the sea, before Baal Zephon. You can encamp facing it by the sea. Pharaoh will say of the Israelites, they are astray in the land. The wilderness has closed in on them. Then I will stiffen Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them.
I'm sorry.
Now I got to find my spot again.
Verse 4.
Then he will stiffen Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, that I may gain glory through Pharaoh and all his host. And the Egyptians shall know that I am Adonai. And they did so. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his courtiers had a change of heart about the people and said, what is this we have done, releasing Israel from our service? He ordered his chariot and took his men with him. He took 600 of his picked chariots and the rest of the chariots of Egypt, with officers in all of them. Adonai stiffened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he gave chase to the Israelites. As the Israelites were departing defiantly, boldly, the Egyptians gave chase to them, and all the chariot horses of Pharaoh, his horsemen and his warriors, overtook them in camp by the sea, near Pi Hahiroth, before Baal Zephon. As Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites caught sight of the Egyptians advancing upon them. Greatly frightened, the Israelites cried out to Adonai. And they said to Moses, was it for want of graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, taking us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt, saying, let us be, and we will serve the Egyptians? For it is better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. But Moses said to the people, have no fear, stand by and witness the deliverance which Adonai will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never see again. Adonai will battle for you. You hold your peace.
Right. Hold your peace. Be quiet. Right. Don't. This is not the time. So this was the first of the rebellions. There's actually 5 of them. that we have 5 times in this week's Torah portion, in which the people complained. They haven't even crossed the Sea of Reeds yet, and so it's like the very opposite of what Patrick Henry said. Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or
Give me death.
give me death." And these these naysayers among the Israelites said instead,
Give me
Give me
death.
death instead of
give me slavery instead of death. I don't want to die. And I love the little sarcastic comment. What? It's such a Yiddish thing. What? There weren't enough graves in Egypt that you had to schlep us out here to get us killed. So it was just a wonderful piece. But you can imagine here they were promised this thing. Okay, everyone get in our parade, get everyone together, borrow stuff that you can, pack it up. We're leaving Egypt, and now they find here's the Sea of Reed right in front of all this water, and they see Pharaoh chasing after them with these chariots and the army and the weapons, and they think, oh my God, they're literally between a rock and a hard place. We have no way to escape, and you've just led us into disaster, Moses. Again, we told you we didn't want you to mess it up. You've always made things worse, right? The first thing that Moses did, he made it worse because he complained. He said, let my people go. And Pharaoh said, yeah, well, now you have to collect your own straw to make your bricks. The people kept thinking, God, Moses, right? We know you're trying hard, but man, things are really going down quickly. So that was the first of the rebellions. Now we're going to see what one of the commentators who would like to share on this. Anybody? Go ahead.
This just brought me to mind of the Laurel and Hardy. This is another fine mess you've gotten us into.
Right.
The way my mind's wandering today.
good wander.
Well, they said, take this desert, please.
Right. Arnie Luderman, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that we're kind of getting the first taste or a lesson in human nature. When the Emancipation Act was passed in the United States, it wasn't like the black slaves ran out and said, we're free. It was a very small percentage. Most of them stood around and just wanted to stay on the plantation as slaves. That was their lives. And I don't know how many generations later yet, and now that's been eliminated. The Jews had been there, and the Israelites have been there for how many generations? And now it makes more sense why basically Moses says, we're going to run them around the desert for a while. We've got to burn this off and get a whole new generation. Because I'm not sure you can change people that have been raised that way for so long.
Right. Well, again, to your point, there's a survival mode. To survive, I need food, water, protection, shelter. And obviously that's not something that they had at all. And go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, it's just a shame, Moses did all this good things for them and they never made him a dinner.
Well, it's like someone saying to you, no more Sinai, we're going to go to another synagogue. What? You got used to Sinai. It's difficult. Change is difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult. But again, they were trying to survive. There's as a slave, someone says you don't look at him in the eye. All right, the Pharaoh, you never look him in the face. You had to avert your gaze. You had to mind your P's and Q's because the whip will come down on you. You know how to negotiate through the barbs of life. And these people, they wanted to survive. And getting out here into freedom is an abstract concept. What the hell does freedom mean if I don't have water to drink, food to eat, shelter to protect me, and security from my enemies? And Moses brought them from the sure thing. As a slave, you're going to feed your slave. You're going to make sure that the slave is protected enough because you're going to work your slave. Maybe work him to death, but at least you're going to have to feed him in the meanwhile. But to say, oh, you're going to give up all those things because there's going to be freedom. right? Go ahead, Margie.
So as a people, you have to go from, or the people in this budding nation have to go from survival mode to survival for what? And once they get, the what down, which is the story of their being, saved for a reason. And of course attributed into that's what God wants. And only the ones who can make that jump, I think, make it. And there aren't a lot of them in the first generation, if any. Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. I think, and well, let's see, look, what our commentary here, Rabbeinu Bach in the 14th century. Now he also saw a deteriorating situation in Spain. It was still 100 years before the Inquisition and the exile from Spain, but he already saw some of the threats on the horizon. So who would like to read from Rabbeinu Bach? Come on.
I'll read it once.
Ready?
All right. Go ahead.
Are there perhaps not sufficient graves in Egypt? Nachmanides wonders aloud how it is possible that people who raise their hands and voices in prayer to God for help could at one and the same time become guilty of such sarcastic comments as the ones attributed to them here by the Torah. Moreover, how could they say at the same time, it is better for us to have to serve the Egyptians in Egypt than to die in the desert? In the view of this formidable question, our sage's statement, Mehilta, and at the time there were 4 groups of Israelites, each of whom responded differently to their dilemma, is proven correct. Group number 1 engaged in prayer. This group is referred to in our text as
Bnei Yisrael.
Bnei Israel. The children of Israel cried out in prayer to Hashem. These were the elite of the people. They had been described as raising their eyes and crying out to God. The second group denied that Moses was indeed God's prophet and did not choose to pray for salvation. Concerning this group, the psalmist wrote, Psalms 106:7, they rebelled at the sea of reeds.
And then a different way, go ahead.
A different wording of this event is presented by the same section of the Mechilta on the words, verse 13, stand firm.
Standing firm. Mm-hmm.
There were 4 groups. The first group referred death to captivity or death at the hands of the Egyptians. They wanted to drown themselves in the sea. This was the group to whom Moses said, stand firm, behold the salvation which will emanate from Hashem. This was the group about which the psalmist had said that they rebelled. The second group wanted to return to Egypt. Concerning this group, the Torah, Moses, gave the assurance that the Israelites would never again see the Egyptians pose a threat to them as they did at that moment. Verse 13. The third group wanted to join the battle with the Egyptians. Moses told them not to bother, that Hashem will fight on your behalf. The fourth group were those who relied on praying to God, as we read. The children of Israel cried out, prayed to Hashem. Moses told them to be silent.
Right. As Moses told them to be silent, but he didn't tell them just to be silent about the prayer. It's also about the quiet as well, about the concern, about and it's interesting that, again, Mechilta, we read 2 large sections of Mechilta Rabbi Ishmael at the very beginning of our session today. And now here's Rabbeinu Bach, who's also making reference to this midrash, that it's not like in one mass, in one group, one voice that we all had the same idea. No, in chaos, in times of concern, you have some who are brave. Let's go fight them. Others who are fearful. Let's go quit and go back to being slaves. Others who had totally despaired. Let's drown ourselves in the sea. And others that no, we'll pray. And Moses was trying to get them all to act in with one voice. No, we all had our own different ideas. And as Moses was trying to get them to react and to survive, Moses, Adonai, God said to Moses the same way. I'll read it real quick. Why do you cry out to me? Right? Why, Moses, are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward. It's not time for prayer. It's time for action. lift up your rod, hold out your arm over the sea and split it so that the Israelites may march into the sea on dry ground. And I will stiffen the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his warriors and his chariots and his horsemen. Let the Egyptians know that I am Adonai, and I will gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots and horsemen. The angel of God, who had been going ahead of the Israelite army, now moved and followed behind them. And the pillar of cloud shifted from in front of them and took up a place behind them, and it came between the army of the Egyptians and the army of Israel. Thus there was a cloud with darkness, and it cast a spell upon the night, so that one could not come near the other all through the night. And Moses held out his arm over the sea, and Adonai drove back the sea with a strong east wind all that night, turned the sea into dry ground. The waters are split. But by the way, some commentators say this must be a different version of the story. The one said that all Moses had to do was hold out his staff, and that was the magic. But here it gave a more naturalistic understanding that there was a strong east wind that blew the waters so that they became like a wall. They don't necessarily contradict each other, but some commentators see that there are two versions of the same story. Regardless, it says the Israelites then went into the sea on dry ground. The waters formed a wall for them on their right and on their left. Now, this is this wonderful passage from the Talmud in Sota, which has a midrash that you may have heard before about Benjamin, Nachshon ben Aminadav, who jumped into the sea, and yet there were different versions of it, and they contradict each other. It's a wonderful piece here. So do I have someone who would like to read a little bit from Talmud?
I'll do it.
All right. Thank you, Kathy.
As it is taught in a Baraita that Rabbi Meir would say, when the Jewish people stood at the Red Sea, the tribes were arguing with one another. This one was saying, I am going into the sea first. And that one was saying, I am going into the sea first. Then in jumped the tribe of Benjamin and descended into the sea first. As it is stated, there is Benjamin, the youngest, ruling them. Do not read it as ruling them.
Rodem.
Rather, Rodem. Read it as
Red Yam.
Red Yam. Yeah.
Raid is Yored is to go down. Yam is the sea. So Benjamin didn't rule over them, but he went down into the sea. Right. And now here's a different version. The princes of Judah. Go ahead, Kathy.
And the princes of the tribe of Judah were stoning them, Rogamim Otam, for plunging in first and not in the proper order. As it is stated in the continuation of the verse, the princes of Judah, their council, Rigmatam. Therefore, Benjamin the righteous was privileged to serve as host to the divine presence of the Almighty, as the temple was built in the territory of Benjamin. As it is stated in Moses' blessing for the tribe of Benjamin, the beloved of Adonai shall dwell in safety by him. He covers him all the day, and he rests between his shoulders. Rabbi Yehuda said to Rabbi Meir.
So that gives us the understanding as to why the temple was put in. Remember, it was like no man's land. And so it was right on the border of where Benjamin is and Judah, that everyone wanted the right to the glory of being, I'm going to be the first to go into the sea. So that was the one opinion. But Rabbi Yehuda says, man, that's not how it happened. Go ahead, Kathy.
That is not how the incident took place. Rather, this tribe said, I am not going into the sea first. And that tribe said, I am not going into the sea first. Then in jumped the prince of Judah, Nachshon ben Aminadab, and descended into the sea first, accompanied by his entire tribe. As it is stated, Ephraim surrounds me with lies, and the house of Israel with deceit, and Judah is yet wayward toward God, which is interpreted homiletically as, and Judah descended with God. Rod Imel.
Right. Go ahead.
And in this regard, the tradition, the writings, explicates Nachshon's prayer at the moment. Save me, God, for the waters come in even unto the soul. I am sunk in deep mire. where there is no standing,
Sorry.
there's no standing outlet?
No, sorry. Where there's no standing. That's the, it should be a.
Oh, okay. Need to call it. Let not the water flood overwhelm me. Neither let the deep swallow me up.
Good.
At that time, Moses was prolonging his prayer. The Holy One, blessed be he, said to him, my beloved ones are drowning in the sea, and you prolong your prayer to me? Moses said before him, Master of the universe, but what can I do? God said to him, speak to the children of Israel that they go forward, and you lift up your rod and stretch out your hand. For this reason, because Nashon and the tribe of Judah went into the sea first, the tribe of Judah merited to govern Israel. As it is stated, Judah became his sanctuary, Israel his dominion. The sea saw it and fled. The Baraita interprets the verses in this manner. What is the reason that Judah became his sanctuary and Israel came under his dominion? Because the sea saw it and fled.
Very good. So, and then finally, it's the conclusion here that the Egyptians went in and the wheels were locked and the waters turned over them. And Israel finally saw the wondrous power with Adonai had wielded against the Egyptians, that we marched on dry land and the Egyptians all drowned. So I want to stop there. So even this is the beginning of this week's Torah portion. It is from here then that we had the first rebellion, the children of Israel thinking, oh my God, now it's all over even before it started. And as soon as they crossed the Sea of Reeds, that's when Moses and Miriam, they led everyone in Michamocha Ba'alim Adonai. Yoni, I know you're convinced that it was Miriam's song. I'll go with that. That's fine too. We know that at least she's sang a good part of it. Regardless, it was a highlight. You know, everyone's just celebrating with this great song of victory and of redemption. And immediately afterwards, they're saying, "What the heck are we going to drink?" Moses brought them to some water, and it's bitter, and it's not like nice Schweppes that you can bitter waters that you can make a nice cocktail out of. No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that kind of water at all. It was water, and so they brought some kind of wood. They put the wood in to try to neutralize it, and if that wasn't enough, then they didn't have enough to eat, and so God brought manna from heaven. And if that wasn't enough, then they still needed some more water. And this was the Torah portion where God said to Moses, take your staff, strike the rock, and water came out. Later on, Moses was told, just speak to the rock. And Moses didn't know. He said, previously, he told me to strike the rock. Now I'm speaking to the rock. And so all these rebellions. And then finally, I got to get to this one little section. Please forgive me. It's not as I got to get to this last little piece with Amalek here. This is the way the Torah portion concludes. The Amalek, this marauding tribe, fought it with Israel at Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua, pick some men for us and go out to battle with the Amalek. Tomorrow I'll station myself at the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. And Joshua did as Moses told him, and he fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Then whenever Moses held up his hands, Israel prevailed. But when he let his hands down because he's exhausted, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew so heavy that they took a stone and they put him under it, and they sat on it. So Moses had something, he said he couldn't stand all day long. While Aaron and Hur, each on each side, they supported Moses' hands. Thus his hands remained steady until the sunset. And Joshua finally overwhelmed the people of Amalek with a sword. And Adonai said, inscribe this in a document as a reminder and read it aloud to Joshua. I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And yet, it said, Moses built an altar and named it Adonai Nisi. He said, it means hand upon the throne of Adonai. Adonai will be at war with Amalek throughout the ages, i.e., though God said, I will blot out Amalek from before us, and Amalek, of course, is symbolized by us as Haman, and we try to blot it out. We stamp on our feet to try to make it so we don't hear him. We know that it doesn't matter. we know that we can try to blot it out, but there's going to be an Amalek in every generation. There's evil out there. And that just goes against our rose-colored, Disney-infected eyesight, that we want there to be, there's no enemies and everyone's nice, and it's just, the world is just one big kumbaya experience. But man, you can't read a single history book and come away with the idea that there's going to be a kumbaya moment in which at one point everybody's going to be on the same page and loving and caring and sweet and compassionate. There's always going to be an Amalek. The question is, will we be that Amalek? Will we be that monster? Will we be the cruel, selfish, brutal person? And the Torah is all about teaching us, love each person to the best of your ability, like you love yourself. Take care of yourself. So all of this in one Torah portion. It's a tremendous Torah portion. It's a Torah portion to sing about, which is why we have Shirat Hayam, the Shabbat Shirah, the Sabbath of song. So may it be that this Sabbath you come, you tune in Friday night with Dan and Jordy, or with Susie and I on Shabbat morning. We'll chant this passage, chapter 15, and we'll sing some crazy songs as well. And come to the concert Saturday night. And remember, if you have something to kvetch about, right? Who's kvetched today already about something? It's too cold. It's too cold. It's too cold. I'm too tired. We don't have enough snow. It's snowing, but it's not enough. Right? We're going to kvetch about something. If you find yourself kvetching, know that you come from the right stock, because we started it from the moment on, right? All good. Anybody final words?
Thank you.
No, thank you guys, and thank you, Yoni. We've got some special programming. I think tomorrow night we have something, lifelong Jewish learning also. And you have, how's your Hebrew class? We got that also on?
That's
We've got that on Friday, and I'll have the slides ready. I'm excited for redemption.
Yay! Very, very good.
Rabbi, do we celebrate
Tu B'Shabbat.
Shabbat?
Right, of course we do. So obviously, normally, there's no liturgy for Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat, if you want to really know about it, it was a tax day. Just as we have tax day, January 1st is the end of beginning of a new tax season, but we also have March 14th. There's businesses have tax days. In the old days, Tu B'Shvat meant that if you have some fruit that's on the tree already by the 15th day of the month of Shvat, then it's taxed, tithed on the previous year's counting. If it blossoms after Tu B'Shvat, it's taxed, tithed on the coming year's tax season. So marking this tax day didn't inspire the rabbis to have lots of liturgy, right? But it did inspire the Jewish National Fund, Karen Kayemet, to say, you know what? Let's push buying trees and having a Seder and giving money to JNF on this day. And we bought into it because that's cool. But the rabbis never made a big deal about it in the liturgy because, who's going to have a big party for tax day?
And they're also, I just talked with my friend in Israel, and I asked him about his Seder, and he said they can't do one this year because everything is so locked down.
I know. Yeah, we don't know, but it looks like we'll probably have to have another Zoom Seder this year too. God knows. You know what? As hard as it is, again, we're kvetching, right? As hard as it is, do the right thing.
Exactly.
Right? Protect yourself. Not everyone has a vaccine. Very, very few of us. I think in Colorado, only 70,000 people have their vaccine, or at least 70,000. I think too. Regardless, it's like 1%. Most of us don't have the vaccine, and we won't get it for another couple of months. So wear the mask, keep distant, be safe, be smart, and we'll get through this darn thing. Someone said, yes, Mom.
I kind of like Zoom. I know I may be unique, but I like Zoom. I can see all of you. I can be part of the community. I don't have to drive anywhere.
I agree. Amy, we're going to keep up doing Zoom even after we can come back together too. We have to, because there are people who can't drive, and some people, they're all on the West Coast, for God's sakes. Janet, give our love to Mark, and whether you feel up to driving or not, we're here. Yoni, thank you. You're awesome.
Thank you.
I love seeing you guys. Hey, by the way, on Thursday, Rabbi Jordy Coleman is going to have a special lunch and learn. So she gets a chance to come in with something special, and that's going to be fun too. So enjoy with her on Thursday.
Yeah, and I think her title is Jews and Tattoos, or Jews with Tattoos.
Yep.
Wonderful. All right, Evelinda.
Thank you.
Margie, guys, take care, guys.
Thanks.